Welcome to the latest installment of the Ross Rundown. I am your host, Matt Harrelson, and alongside with me, as usual, Bran Falk. So we are finally set for Super Bowl 53.
Right.
The teams are set. We now know it's going to be the Los Angeles Rams. And what's that other team?
Never heard of them.
Never heard of
Yeah,
them.
never
They
heard
never
of
seem to make the playoffs at all. They're usually terrible.
Good feel-good story, man. Come from the
Yeah,
bottom.
yeah. Some
Yeah.
guy that was
Yeah.
drafted really late,
Yeah.
and I think he's okay.
Yeah,
But
he'll do.
no, but of course now we know it's the Rams and the
Yeah.
Patriots, both number 2 seeds coming in. Of course, knocked off the number 1 seeds on the road, which we're going to talk about that right now. So let's talk about how we got there. First of all, I do want to mention both of these games ended in overtime.
Yep.
We're going to get to that as well because it's not a good championship game if there's not some controversy.
That's right.
So let's start with the NFC Championship. That one was played first. So the Rams ended up beating the Saints 26-23. We know that that was Greg Zuerlein. I think I'm pronouncing that right. Their kicker, a 57-yard field goal to win the game. But before we get to that part of it, Jared Goff, 25 of 40, 297 yards, touchdown, an INT, and a fumble. So they were able to win, but what do you think about Goff's performance?
Well, Goff was up and down in the game, but early in the game he looked like he was a little nervous, maybe, but he settled in, played a pretty nice football game.
Yeah. And last week we talked a little bit about how in both this and the AFC Championship, it was the young guys versus the older guys. Now I remember taking both old guys.
And
Obviously,
I took both young guys.
I got one. We
That's
both
right.
got
That's
one of those
That's
right. But you think maybe him being young and not really being in this position yet affected him a little bit, at least to start?
Oh yeah. Anybody that says it doesn't is just probably not telling the truth.
Yeah.
I mean, some people maybe hide it better and play better, but he certainly was affected a little bit. But he played a pretty solid game. I mean, and made big plays when he had to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's look at the running game. C.J. Anderson had 16 carries, 44 yards. Gurley only 4 carries, 10 yards, and a touchdown.
Yeah.
But this was nothing compared, no offense,
Yeah,
but what
that's
they did against your Cowboys.
That's right.
So was this more of the Saints defense stepping up more than Dallas did, or do you think maybe these guys were just not really as good as we thought they were?
Well, maybe a little of both, but I think the Saints defense saw what they did to Dallas, and they stacked the line and said, "You're not going to do that to us."
Yeah.
And the running backs didn't play particularly well either.
Yeah.
In that game.
They did not, and perhaps it was the thing, like you said, where they were like, all right, Saints D, we're going to make Goff beat us.
That's right.
Now, his main receiver, Brandon Cooks, had 7 receptions, 107 yards, which is a really good game.
Yeah.
No touchdowns, however, so they were able to keep the Rams' number 1 threat out of the end zone. And then, of course, I mentioned Zuerlein had that 57-yard field goal to win the game.
Yeah, to tie the game and to win the game.
And it looked like the 57-yard, he could have made it from 67.
Yeah. Is that the one that started looked like it was going right, or was that the one to tie the game? It looked like it was going right and came back in.
The one that was tying it came back in. The one he hit to win was
dead money.
Dead money. I don't know if he had some wind behind him or something, but
he killed that ball.
Absolutely killed it. On the losing side, somebody had to lose. Breeze, very similar numbers to Goff. Also, he was 26 of 40, so they both threw the ball 40 times. A lot, but not a whole lot in today's NFL. 249 yards. He also had a pick, but he had 2 touchdowns. Alvin Kamara, though, let's talk about him for just a second. He had 8 carries, 15 yards. But he also had 11 receptions and 96 yards on top of that. Now, he's a young running back. What do you think his ceiling is moving forward?
I think he's going to be a superstar. And the Saints are just, Breeze is 40 or 41. So they've got great balance, and he brings balance to that offense. Now, he didn't run the ball, like I said, particularly well the other night, but he still gives you an option. And those little short passes he's catching at the backfield are almost like a run game. And so they keep defensive honest by getting him the ball.
Yeah, and between him and Mark Ingram, Ingram's a little bit older. But talking about Drew Brees being, in his lower 40s, he's obviously only got a handful of more seasons left. So depending on what happens at their quarterback position, they're going to have to start leaning more on Kamara, aren't they?
Oh, yeah, you would think so. Absolutely. Brees had one of the best years he's ever had a great year. But, like you said, he's over 40.
Right.
I mean, it's not going to last forever.
Right. Not everybody can be Tom Brady.
That's right. Not everybody played under 100.
Although Drew Brees is doing a pretty good job of it.
Doing a good impersonation.
Now, let me ask you if this perhaps was the difference maker in this game. The Saints had 3 fumbles in this game. Ted Ginn Jr., Taysom Hill, and Kamara. Now, none of those ended up in the Rams' hands. They were able to recover them, but you have to be careful with the football, especially in the playoffs, right?
Yeah, that's right. And it still cost you they still cost you possession if you don't turn it over, because if you fumble the ball and you have to fall on it,
Right.
it really basically costs you a down and puts you in long yardage situations,
Yeah.
and it makes it harder to convert. So it doesn't. It's not a turnover, but in effect, it affects your punting game and making you have to punt the ball when you maybe wouldn't have had to. So
Yeah.
it certainly hurts, and you got to take care of the ball to win the games.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, of course, the talk of the game afterwards was the pass interference
Yeah.
call that never was.
Yeah.
So,
Brutal call, by
What's
the way.
your well, you kind of asked me what your opinion is, because the NFL actually came out and admitted that
Yeah.
the refs messed this up.
I mean, and the defensive back, you heard his explanation after the game. He said he looked back
Yeah.
when he heard the crowd react. He kind of was looking for the flag, and the ref said, "Well, no, the ball was tipped." And he was like, "Okay, cool," but replay shows it clearly was not tipped.
Yeah.
And it's just an awful call. He was trying to make up ground because he was beat,
Right.
and never looked back and just plowed right through the guy. Now it was bang bang, but he was still early.
Right.
It was a penalty, and that really did change the outcome of the game, because you heard Sean Payton say, "We would have taken the knee 3 times, kicked the field goal, game over."
Yeah, game over, and
Yeah.
they'd be playing in the Super Bowl instead
Yeah.
of the Rams.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, even with replay in NFL, obviously there's still opportunities for the refs to mess
That's
these
right.
up, and I know it's the playoffs, and I feel like the refs allow them to play a little bit more touchy-feely,
Yeah.
if you will, during
Yeah.
the playoffs. But still, you have to turn around
Yeah.
and at least look for the ball and try to
defensive
locate
backs
it.
got to make. Now, I've always been of the opinion that they do too much to protect quarterbacks and wide receivers. I mean, you look back at 70s and 80s, and they would just mug people. And I didn't want to go back to that, but that play in Sunday night's game was awful.
Yeah.
I mean, that was just blatant. I mean, he never made a play on the ball and just plowed through the guy and never gave him a chance to catch it.
And somewhere in there between something like this and like you mentioned the 70s and 80s, somewhere in there there's a happy medium,
That's right.
isn't there?
That's right. We're not playing touch football,
Right.
But you can't plow through people either.
Exactly. And I'm afraid that eventually we're going to just put flags on these
That's
guys
right.
and just send
That's
them out
right.
there.
Did you see the Pat? I'm sure we'll get to that in the Pat.
Yeah,
game. Never
we
mind.
are.
Never mind.
right after this question. So, of course, Saints fans are upset,
Yeah,
as they probably
rightfully so.
should be. Now, I feel like blown calls sometimes, unfortunately, are a part of sports.
Yeah.
And, you win
That's
some,
right.
you lose some. But did you know that there is actually a loophole rule out there that would allow Roger Goodell to actually reverse this call?
Yeah, I did not know that until
Yes.
all the uproar this week. I had never, all my years watching sports, I never knew about that rule.
I didn't either.
So-
But, I mean, I seriously doubt that's going to happen. But
Oh my
what
gosh.
kind of Pandora's box would that
Oh
open?
my gosh, we would have appeals.
Yeah.
I mean, we would have hanging chads in NFL games. I mean, it would be awful. I mean, games wouldn't be decided. I mean, the Patriots might not know the opponent for a week and a half.
Yeah.
While they played this thing out.
And then I was going to say, I mean, at that point, would you have them replay the down, send everybody out
Yeah.
there for like a quarter? I mean,
Yeah.
how would you even go about that?
That's just tough. I mean, unfortunately, like I said, human element is a part of it. And at the end of the day, the Saints still had chances.
Right? Yeah. There were other things that led.
That's
up to
right.
that.
They still had, and even after that, they had chances. They could have gone out there and not turned the ball over in overtime.
Yeah. Let me ask you a question about this before we move forward. I feel like not just in football but other sports, technology is really starting to integrate itself more and more every year, especially when it comes like just with replay in
Yeah.
general, how that's changed over
Yeah.
the years. Do you think we'll see a day? Do you think it's something that we should see where the human element of refs are taken out of it? And like baseball, for instance, there's a robot back there instead
Yeah.
of an umpire.
I hope not, personally.
Right.
I don't know how you feel about it. I hope I like the human element of the game. Yeah, he messed up, made an awful call, but I like the human element.
I do too. And I'm okay with replay. And I'll be honest with you, initially I was against it.
Yeah, I was too.
But as it's changed over the years,
It has enhanced the game.
it has. But I would hate to see there's been talk of perhaps setting up a laser, if you will, that's across the goal line from post to post, pylon to pylon. That would if the nose of the football touches it, you'd automatically know.
Okay.
So it's things like that I think are in talks to try to make it easier on the refs. What do you think about that idea?
I don't love it personally. I mean, if they do it, I'll just like with replay.
Yeah.
I'll say I'm against it and I'll adapt.
Right.
But I don't want anything else slowing the game down.
All right. So let's move on to the AFC Championship. Of course, the Pats and the Chiefs. Tom Brady and Belichick do what they do, and it's like I said last week, you cannot bet against them until
Patriots fans better hope I pick against him for the Super Bowl whenever we get to that show.
Yeah.
But my gosh, I mean, he just always finds. We were sitting there watching that game, and I said, "This is set up perfectly for Tom Brady to just be Tom Brady," and he was.
So he was 30 of 46, 348 yards.
Golly.
Now, he did have 2 interceptions, which is kind of un-Brady-like.
Yeah, the one in the end zone early in the game was really shocking.
Right.
When they were getting ready to put that game away.
He also had a touchdown, but this was 2 playoff games in a row where he wasn't sacked. So offensive linemen so many times get overlooked, but they've been very critical in keeping him standing up, right?
I mean, let's face it, he's a 40-something-year-old guy, and he's standing back there not getting knocked on his back any. That makes a world of difference, not giving him anything to think about.
Yeah.
He's making great throws, too.
Now, I'm not sure which of these picks it was, and I don't know if you heard about this, but apparently there was a laser pointer that somehow got in Brady's eyes right before he threw that pick. Now, everyone except in Boston are like, whiners, you know. But
Spygate.
Yeah. But, I mean, you know, laser pointers can mess with you.
That's right.
Think maybe that actually had anything to do with it?
It could. It absolutely could have affected him. I mean, I know I couldn't throw as effectively with a light shining in my eyes.
Yeah.
So.
Speaking of the Pats run game, we talked about the Rams here and the Saints. Sony Michel out of Georgia, he's really come on late in the season.
Great
playoffs. And they leaned on him.
Yes.
29 yards, 29 carries rather, 113 yards, 2 touchdowns. And then also Rex Burkhead, 12 carries, 41 yards, another 2 touchdowns. So that's where most of their points came from. But what does it say about the Pats offense where they can just plug in guys and it just works out?
It's incredible. I mean, year after year after year, you put a guy in there, and you're like, who?
Yeah.
And the next thing you know, he's on the cover of Sports Illustrated because he's a playoff hero.
Yeah.
It's truly amazing to watch.
So Brady hit 8 different receivers. And I bet you most of the people here, as much as we cover sports, if you put all those guys in this room, Gronk's about the only one people would recognize. Yeah. And what do you think? What's your opinion on the fact that this may be Brady's and Belichick's best season, best coaching job, considering who else is around Brady?
I mean, it just wasn't that long ago. People were talking about they were dead in the water. They lost 2 games in December.
Defense was terrible.
Yeah, they're awful. What's wrong? I mean, I remember seeing somebody on Sports Channel, what's wrong with the Patriots? And here we are, they're in the Super Bowl. A month later, they've qualified for the Super Bowl. It's just maybe although he's got so many, it may be his best job. And you could tell watching the celebration on the field, they felt like they overcome a lot to get there. And Tom Brady said last week after they won, everybody thinks we suck. Yeah. And then Tom Brady this week talked about how this one was a little bit sweeter. And Gronkowski, I mean, everybody was saying, an article on ESPN last week said Gronkowski looked like he was running in snow. Yeah. And then he had a great game when he had some big catches when he had to the other night.
He did. He had 6 receptions, 79 yards. And I know one of the questions I asked you guys last week was, in this game, which team had the better tight end? Well, numbers-wise, it was Gronk. Even though I said Kelsey. I don't know.
I said Kelsey.
Yeah. But, it just goes to show you the Pats, you think they're not going to be there, and they just seem to prove everybody wrong, even though it's like, they've been there so many times. Matter of fact, here's how many times they've been there. This will be they've had 9 Super Bowl appearances since 2001, 4 in the last 5 seasons alone, and they have 5 Super Bowl trophies. So you can't argue with success, right?
And that's amazing because most people peak, most athletes, particularly quarterbacks, peak in their early 30s to mid 30s, and Brady, since his mid 30s have passed, has gone to all these Super Bowls.
And it seems like he's getting better somehow.
My gosh, it's amazing how
he just won an MVP last year at 40.
And was really the MVP of that game Saturday, although the run game was huge. But in the last 2 drives of that game, and that overtime drive was Montana-esque.
Yes.
I mean, he just picked them apart.
Yes, he did.
Where they brought pressure, didn't bring pressure, it didn't matter what they did, and he went right to his 2 favorites. He spread it out during the game, but when he had to have those catches in that last drive, he went to Edelman and Gronk and took them right down the field, and the Chiefs couldn't do anything to stop it.
His 2 security blankets.
That's right.
And real quick, we're going to talk about OT because obviously that was a big deal. But I want to run through the Chiefs' stats here because they played a good game.
Yeah, they did. A great game.
Mahomes did what he's done all season long.
Love Mahomes.
16-31, 295, 3 touchdowns, no picks. Now, he was sacked 4 times and fumbled once. So his offensive line not as sturdy as the Patriots. Think that had something to do with the outcome?
Without a doubt. Yeah. It certainly helped. Pressure matters.
And I know last week we talked about the Saints or the Chiefs running game, and we said Damian Williams. Who in the world is this guy? Because he blew it up last week. This week, not as much, 10 carries, 30 yards, and a touchdown, but he also added 5 receptions, 66 yards, and 2 touchdowns. So overall, he had almost 100 total yards and 3 touchdowns. And, of course,
I think he had touchdowns on 3 straight drives at
he
one
did.
point.
And then, of course, Clemson's very own, Sammy Watkins, 4 receptions, 114 yards.
He had a good game. He did. He really did.
He did. So let's talk about overtime.
Okay.
Because it seemed like the Chiefs lost to a coin toss. So this can't be fair, right? I mean, they've got to do something about the fact that if you lose the coin toss, you're almost going to lose. Like, it's almost already decided, right? Because all they have to do is kick a field goal and just put points on the board.
Well, no, they did address it. They changed it where if you only kick the field goal, the other team will get the ball.
Okay.
But so they addressed that, but the Chiefs had – I come back to this. I wouldn't want to change it again because if you score a touchdown, it's over. If you score a field goal, the other team gets a chance. 3 times on that drive, they had 3rd and 10s or more. Get off the field.
Yeah.
Get a stop.
Yeah, you're right. I just think that there is something archaic about the rule.
Yeah, I don't love the overtime rule. I don't.
Yeah.
They have tweaked it some and made it better. I don't love it, but, at some point, Chiefs got to stop them.
That's true. But do you think, this game aside, just in general, first of all, ties should never happen in football.
No, I hate ties.
First of all.
And if we're not soccer. Sorry, soccer.
Well, yeah, that's a whole.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's been around for longer than we've been alive.
Yeah.
But as far as like a game like this, like I know that if they should have stopped them, but shouldn't Mahomes at least had a chance to take his team down the field?
I know the fans wanted to see it, and we were sitting there watching that game with some friends, and my wife says, why don't they just set the clock in overtime? Or no, maybe my friend's wife said, why don't they just set the clock in overtime like an extra quarter and play it out, and how it comes out, it comes out.
Like basketball.
Yeah, and I said that's actually not a horrible idea. So maybe that's something to look at because really when come playoff time, you really like to see.
Yeah.
The league's made of superstars. You'd like to see when your superstars on the league with a chance to answer.
And I would think that it would be beneficial financially, at the least, to have Mahomes go out there and see if he can, match Brady.
Yeah, because Brady was just Brady.
But I think that they should take a look at the college rules for overtime, where Brady went down and scored. No matter what, so whether it was a field goal or a touchdown, so then the Chiefs should have had the opportunity to do that. Now I don't know if they should line up at the 25 or whatever,
but I get your point. I mean, that's a valid point. I mean, I'm for anything that makes the game more exciting. I'm not one of these people that doesn't like any change.
Yeah,
and so I think if it makes the game better and made overtime better, I'm all for it.
I am too. So, of course, as I mentioned, these two teams are set for the Super Bowl 53 down in Atlanta. I don't think we're ever going to see a home team play in the Super Bowl, are we?
No.
Funny thing is, actually, at the beginning of the season, I took the Chargers. I also took the Falcons to get there and win because I just wanted to see a home team finally play in the Super Bowl. Yeah, but we're going to wait till next week to do Super Bowl picks for 2 reasons. One is we've still got another 2 weeks almost until the Super Bowl. Right. And number 2 is next week is Ross's 1-year anniversary.
Awesome.
Our first show was the week before the Super Bowl last year where we all took the Patriots except for Jeremy. He took the Eagles.
He took the Eagles.
And looked like the genius side of the group. So, with that being said, let's continue our talk about the Patriots. And it's something that I sent out to you guys this week. Was talking about the Brady-Belichick connection and about how I don't even know how would you describe it because Hall of Fame doesn't even feel worthy enough. But one of the best duos, coaching quarterbacks duos of all time, I think is easy to say.
Oh, yeah.
And I ran through all those numbers that they have together since 2001. But I wanted to get you guys' opinions on who you think another duo, quarterback-coach duo is to watch moving forward. Because obviously Belichick, Brady, they can't do this forever, even though it seems like it.
I know. One we saw play this weekend, Mahomes, Reed.
Yeah.
Be a good combination to see happen. That could happen. Prescott, Garrett. I'm kidding about the Garrett part. Prescott and somebody.
Well, I was going to say, you could say, I think the hardest part is getting the coach part of it. Because obviously cornerstone quarterbacks are more likely to stick around than coaches are. That's a good one. I think another good one is the team that Brady and Belichick are going to meet in the Super Bowl.
Excellent.
Sean McVay, Jared Goff.
Oh,
Sean
yeah,
McVay,
great.
33 years
God,
old.
Yeah, that's a great pick.
Yeah.
By the way, that's a great answer to that.
And I didn't realize I knew he was young. I didn't realize he's that young.
Wow, I thought he was 35. I didn't know he was that young. Wow,
Youngest-
33 years old.
Youngest head coach to be in a Super Bowl ever, obviously.
So he's 8. So he's 8 years younger than Brady.
Yeah, then Brady. Yeah, the quarterback for the other team.
Golly, that's impressive.
Yeah, but I think just the continuity that they'll have, they've been successful, so I don't really see either one of them going anywhere. They're in a big-time market in L.A. now.
That's right.
I see big things for them.
And they got superstar running back.
Yeah.
Good wide receiving group. Pretty good, not pretty good, really good defense. And if all the pieces are there for them to make a long run.
Yeah, and they've been willing to spend some money too.
Yeah,
if they
they're all
need
willing
to
to spend money, and he's willing to take chances as a coach.
Yeah. A couple other combos here I want to throw out there. One is Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson. By the way, Russell Wilson's 30, so the Rams coach is only 3 years older than Russell Wilson.
Wow.
But that duo has been together now for 7 years, believe it or not. Already have a Super Bowl together.
Yeah, been to 2, won 1.
Yeah.
That's a good one. And Russell Wilson, with all the chaos in Seattle in the offseason last year with Richard Sherman leaving, the Earl Thomas drama.
Yeah.
You saw the Legion of Boom kind of dismantle.
Yeah.
And then Russell Wilson took that team and led them back to the playoffs this year.
He did.
And had a good, solid year. So that's a good call.
And I would imagine under Pete Carroll, they'll rebuild that defense.
Oh, yeah. The defense was still pretty good this year. And I think they'll address it in the draft, too.
And we see this in all sports where, you got all of these guys that made up the Legion of Boom. And that was great when you could afford them.
That's right.
But then they get older, they get expensive.
They get to be the Legion of Boom,
Yeah.
and they're expensive to keep.
And then you have to decide who's going to stay and who's going to go.
That's right.
And it's part of sports. It
That's
happens. You mentioned Andy Reid and Mahomes. And one more here I want to throw out there. They weren't successful this year, but I think they will be in the future, is Kyle Shanahan and Jimmy Garoppolo in San Francisco.
I think it's a good call. I mean, Garoppolo, didn't he get hurt, miss most of the year?
He did, but what we've seen from him, just backing up Brady and then the handful of games he's played, I think he's going to be a stud.
I do too, and I think Shanahan's a good coach.
Yeah. And
Comes
again,
from good genes for coaching.
yes, he does. He's got some, it's in the blood.
That's right.
If you will. And I think that, again, Shanahan's a coach that the 49ers organization will give him some time to develop Jimmy Garoppolo, and I really see big things for San Fran. Plus, they got that brand new stadium. So.
Yeah. Great city.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's move forward. One more topic here as far as NFL. So they haven't announced the MVP this year. Patrick Mahomes obviously has been the front runner all season long. The man had 50 touchdowns this year.
Impressive.
Is it Mahomes' MVP to lose, or could somebody steal it from him?
Well, I heard Breeze's name mentioned this week. I mean, he'd obviously be a good second, a good choice. Brady had a great year. Gurley had a great year.
Jared Goff had a great year.
Jared Goff had a great year. But I really think Mahomes is going to win it.
Yeah, I think if you ask 10 people, 9.9 of them are going to say that it's Mahomes.
That's right. I'll be really surprised if he doesn't win it.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. With that being said, let me throw you a quick curveball. You think Andy Reid is coach of the year, doing what he did with that team, or do you think maybe it should be somebody else? And I'm not even necessarily asking for a name, but
I think he did a good job. I don't think he's coach of the year.
Yeah.
He had a really nice year, but no, I would say no.
I hadn't really thought about this, though. I just asked it. But and I'm probably going to mispronounce his name, but Frank Reich from Indianapolis. A lot of times Coach of the Year goes to a team that was supposed to underachieve and they overachieve.
Yeah.
And I feel like, of course, having a healthy Andrew Luck will help you with that. But
and the guy in Cleveland.
Absolutely. Can't even think of what his name is.
I forgot his name.
But having Baker Mayfield, again.
It makes a difference.
And I'll be honest with you, I thought Baker was going to be a bust.
I'm shocked.
Yeah.
I really thought his bravado. I know he said he wasn't, but he reminded me so much of Manziel.
Me too.
And I thought they were going right back on the same path.
It reminded me of Manziel from day one.
And he has so shut me up on that.
Yeah, me too.
He's a winner.
I thought his size would come into play.
Yep.
I thought just the losing Browns culture would eat him up like it has so many other quarterbacks. But maybe he's the guy to push him over the edge.
I hope so for their sake, man. Yeah. I know they're tired of being the butt of jokes.
Absolutely. Plus, the Bud Light gave free beer out when they got their first win this season because they didn't win any last year. So I know Browns fans are happy for that.
That's right.
And then, I hate to say it, but just as a joke, Pro Bowl's coming up this week. Nobody cares. It doesn't mean anything. But who do you think will win?
NFC, because I'm an NFC person. And they got the Cowboy play. They got the Cowboys.
I would usually say that. I'm going to go AFC simply because our man Melvin Ingram's going to be playing.
That's right.
In
Go
it,
Richmond Raider. That'd be awesome.
Otherwise, I'll be pulling for the Skins. In the
I will
game.
say my one prediction is there will be no defense played.
No, never is. Probably shouldn't be.
No, that's right.
People want to see a lot of scoring.
That's right.
And obviously, you don't want guys trying to get hurt, get
right.
concussed during a Pro Bowl game. That means absolutely nothing.
Zero.
Basically, it's an excuse for them to go to Orlando and have a vacation.
That's right.
So. All right, let's get into something that you and I both love, and that is baseball.
Love it. Almost time.
Yep, almost.
That's
4
right.
weeks they
That's
are
right.
reporting. Actually, more like 3 weeks at
That's
this
right.
point. But the MLB Hall of Fame inductees have been announced, and I'll go ahead and throw these out there.
Okay.
Edgar Martinez, the designated hitter, Mike Mussina and Roy Halladay, 2 starting pitchers, and Mariano Rivera, the greatest closer of all time, I think you can say.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Here's what surprised me. Not because it happened, but he's the first to garner all 425 first-place votes. I'm not saying that he doesn't deserve that, but how did we get this far without it happening before?
How did Derek Jeter?
Exactly. That's exactly the name I threw out. And also threw out Chipper.
Chipper Jones. I mean, who would look at their resumes and vote no on them for the Hall of Fame? Just some curmudgeon who hated the Braves or hated the Yankees.
But I mean, you think about it.
Mariano's deserving.
Babe Ruth.
Lou
Gehrig, Henry Aaron.
Marius Strzemski. I mean, Henry Aaron, just
all the greats never got all the votes.
That's just shocking. I did not know until I read that article that he was the first unanimous selection, and I was shocked. And it's no knock, but I'm shocked that it's a relief pitcher.
I am too. That did shock me, and I know he's the greatest.
Yeah, he's the best relief pitcher
time.
ever, and is a first ballot.
Yeah,
but I'm shocked that the first unanimous player to
get
in
because
is a relief pitcher.
I feel like up until the last 5 or 10 years, relievers weren't even getting into the Hall of Fame.
That's right.
Of course, baseball's changed, and that's changed with it. But yeah, I mean, it just really surprised me. And a lot of times, I feel like it went on for so long that I think there was like every year there was a writer that just said, "I'm not going to just for the just to make a point out of it." So again, it surprised me. But Edgar Martinez, let's run through these. Right. Edgar Martinez, I feel like. I got to see the majority of his career in Seattle. I felt like he should have been in quite a few years ago. But what do you think?
I had forgotten that he wasn't in.
Yeah, I think he'd been on the thing for like 12 years.
A career 300 hitter, all those, couple thousand, well, probably 3,000 hits, 2,500. I don't even know how many hits he had. 300 bombs, just steady every year. I mean, he had a 14 or 15-year career with 300 bombs. That means he averaged 20 home runs for an entire career. Yeah. Just solid. Their first postseason series victory, I think he got the game-winning hit. Just a class act. Yeah. And maybe the best player in Mariners history, I think, not named Griffey.
Right. I was going to say, there's another guy out there.
Not named Griffey.
Or Randy Johnson.
Randy Johnson might have something to say about that.
What's your opinion on, we're talking about relievers getting in. What's your opinion on DHs getting in? Because you don't play in the field, so you have to put up big offensive numbers.
And didn't Martinez play field early in his career?
I think he played a little first base.
Yeah,
but we all know him as a DH.
Yeah, that's my only holdup with Martinez is I'm not a big fan of just DH, and I'm a National League fan because I hate the DH rule.
The same way.
But
if you're going to do it, might as well be the best at it. Right?
He did it right. I mean, he did it as well as anybody ever has, in my opinion.
Yeah. Moving on, the pitchers that are on here. We had a little discussion online about this. Mike Mussina and Roy Halladay. By the way, one other thing I want to bring about Martinez. I think he played his entire career with the Mariners, which to me, I include that when I'm thinking about.
That's a check mark beside the name, like Chipper or Derek.
Exactly, because quite frankly, with free agency and trades, you don't see that anymore.
He could have chased a ring at any time. He was in like 87 to 04, so right in the peak of his career when the Yankees dynasties were there, and they would have thrown millions his way to have him in that spot. Yeah. And he didn't go chasing the ring. He stayed in Seattle, and I think that counts for something.
I completely agree. Now, Mussina, he did chase a ring and went to New York.
Never got it.
Roy Halladay, both starting pitchers. Of course, unfortunately, Roy Halladay passed away. It was last year, wasn't it?
Last year, about a year.
I think it was a plane accident. Nonetheless, you and I had the discussion online, and I don't know, I can't remember if you agree with me or not, but I personally don't think either one of these guys should be in.
Mussina maybe more so because he's got 270 wins, but Haladay's got 203 wins. The only other guy I know of with that few wins that's in the Hall of Fame is Koufax and Smoltz. And Koufax was a game-changing pitcher who got cut short by injuries. And Smoltz also piled up all the saves.
Yeah, had 200 saves.
Yeah. So I just think 202 or 203 wins is not great for a long enough period of time to be Hall of Fame. Yeah. My opinion. A great player in his peak years, but to me, he's not Hall of Fame.
See, we're getting to a point where the guys that I grew up watching are the ones being voted on. So I feel like, now obviously they don't care what my opinion is, but I feel like I've seen enough baseball to where when these guys come up for election, if I have to think twice about it, I don't think they should be in.
That is a good litmus test, in my opinion.
Like Mo Rivera, I was like, automatic. I thought Edgar Martinez, I was like, he should be in.
Yeah.
But then when I saw Mussina and Halladay, I had reservations. Yeah. And just to me, my gut tells me they shouldn't be in.
That's right.
Now
because that's just such a shrine and the elite of the elite.
Right. You can't just let everybody in. Yeah. I do want to say this. I feel like with analytics being so huge, and especially in baseball,
that's right.
You can almost carve numbers out to make anybody look Hall of Fame worthy nowadays, can't you?
That's right. I mean, why not Harold Reynolds? No offense, Harold Reynolds. No offense. I mean, but why not Glenn Hubbard?
Yeah.
I mean,
hit 4 home runs in a game.
That's right. So why? So yeah, let's just. I mean, I think it should be the best of the best.
Yeah. And I read another article, and we don't necessarily have to get into this, but it was Hall of Famer guys that we're watching right now. Ichiro, we're going to talk about Ichiro here in a little bit, but Ichiro was on that list. To me, first ballot.
Oh, no doubt.
Mike Trout. I think Mike Trout gets in today if he retires.
My son asks me this question all the time. Like when we're watching a player, he says, if his career ended today, is he in the Hall of Fame? And Mike Trout's one of the ones I say yes to.
Yeah, I say him. I say Kershaw.
Kershaw's Hall of Fame.
Of course, Miguel Cabrera will get in. Yep. Pujols will get in.
That's right.
I'm trying to remember some of the other names on there. But, I think sometimes people don't appreciate the players that they're watching while they're watching them until they retire, and you have to wait for them to get into the Hall of Fame. But unfortunately, we saw this slew of Braves players get in.
That's right.
I think it might be a while before we see another one. How long until Acuna retires?
Acuna, come on, Acuna. Is there anybody since that group that just got in? I don't know of anybody.
Well, of course, that group got us Bobby Cox, John Sherrill-Holtz from that side of it. Then, of course, we got Chipper, Greg Maddux, Tom Glavine, John Smoltz. Perhaps that's it from the dynasty years.
That's probably all the Hall of Famers. I know Pendleton just got in the Braves Hall of Fame, but that's an entirely different thing.
Yeah, and I have a soft spot for Pendleton. He was one of my favorite players growing up, and I've said that whole thing I just said about Hall of Famers. Yeah. Personally, I said, well, Pendleton should be in, but
same as
probably
I'd say
not.
with Drew Pearson for the Cowboys in the NFL Hall of Fame. But you look at his numbers, he's probably not.
There you go. Now let's talk about the Hall of Fame and who didn't get in. And two of the biggest names, obviously, Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens. So I'm gonna keep it simple. Right. Should they eventually get in?
No.
Why?
You cheated.
Okay.
Plain and simple.
All right. Here's why they should get in.
Okay.
First of all, times are changing. Voters that are against this, that vote against it, are starting to get pushed out just because of age by voters that aren't that hung up about it.
That's right.
2 is Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens were part of, look, baseball, as we know, has been made up of eras. To me, that, whatever you want to call it, 80 to, I don't know, 2010, we'll just call it 20, whatever it is, was the steroid era. And no, not everybody was doing steroids, but I feel like a vast majority of the league was doing it. Pitchers, position players, whatever.
Yeah.
Out of all those people, Roger Clemens and Barry Bonds were the best. Barry Bonds, first of all, Barry Bonds probably could have got in before he got into steroids.
If you take away his Giants career, he's a Hall of Famer.
Right.
I think.
But Barry Bonds won multiple MVPs. Clemens has like 7 Cy Youngs. How can you sit there and, I know they cheated, I get it, but I just find it hard to sit here and say, well, they shouldn't get in, even though everybody was doing steroids and they just happened to be the best of the players during that era doing steroids.
Yeah. I do get that. I do get that argument. And I do understand that side of it. However, I just always come back to when I this question a lot. People ask me all the time about Pete Rose, and a lot of my friends think Pete Rose should be in the Hall of Fame. At the end of the day, I think Pete Rose cheated, and Pete Rose was in a position to affect the games he was betting on.
Yeah,
and
that's true.
And so, I just have a hard time knowing you cheated. I have a hard time saying yes.
Yeah, it's just again, it's very touchy because
Richard Petty's in the NASCAR Hall of Fame, and he says if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying.
Yeah, well, yeah. As far as betting on games, that to me that's a little different. However, Pete Rose is the all-time hits leader, and again, I just find it's hard to leave out your all-time hits leader of the Hall of Fame.
You got your all-time hits leader and your all-time home runs leader, not in the Hall of Fame.
Exactly.
I mean,
and one of the greatest pitchers of all time,
and one of the most dominant, greatest pitchers of all time, no doubt.
Yeah.
So I get the arguments for, but I just.
But see,
maybe I'll soften as I get older.
Bonds and Clemens, I think they should be in, but I don't think McGuire should be in.
Nope.
I don't think Sammy Sosa should be in. I don't think Palmeiro. So I mean, there are other steroid guys that I don't think should be in. I just think that they were two of the best during that era. Let me throw another name out there, a guy that's already in the Hall of Fame, in Tony La Russa.
Okay.
Now, as you know, he was in charge of the Oakland A's during the Bash Brother days, and as we know, McGuire and Jose Canseco were juicing, and there's no way that he didn't know about that. So just in the connecting of the dots, for writers to allow La Russa in and allow that to happen under his watch, but not allow the guys doing it to get in.
Okay, my only devil's advocate thing on that, because that's a great argument. I've never heard that argument before. All right. The only devil that we don't know for sure he knew.
Okay.
We can't prove that he knew.
All right.
And
he'd never admitted it.
No, of course not. If you asked him today, I'm sure he would say, "No, I had no idea."
I mean, they put him in charge of he works for the MLB office now.
That's right. So he would never admit that.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That'd be the only. That's a tough one. That's a good argument.
Yeah. I just I've always been curious about that. You allow the guy that was coaching this.
True.
Of course, there were a lot of guys coaching them, but you know what I mean. Like, I've read Jose Canseco's 2 books.
Have you really?
Steroids.
I've never read either one of them.
They're great reads. I just find it really hard to believe that La Russa didn't know what was going on.
Does he say La Russa knew?
I don't remember if he said that. It's probably been 10 years since I read the books. But, they talk about how they would just go in the bathroom and shoot each other up. And, right there in front of everybody because everybody was doing it. It wasn't that big a deal. And so I just have to believe because a baseball clubhouse for that many games, you're basically living with each other. I don't know. I just to me it's a fine line, and I think it's almost hypocritical in a way.
Okay,
but
I get that.
That's just my opinion. Okay. So let's move forward because we're running out of time here. Let's go to our big impacts of the week, which are, of course, brought to you by Richmond Community College, whose motto is Local College, Big Impact. Who you got this week?
I got the Rockingham Rockets.
Woo!
Boys,
my alma mater.
The middle school basketball team with a big win yesterday over Keith Parsons Hamlet Red Rams, 42-39. I think the score was.
Yeah.
And I didn't get to make the game, but from what I understand, it was packed. It was a packed house.
It was,
and probably the most attended sports event since Raider season ended.
You're probably right. And Dion was there and was like, Russell, you got to get the camera out at the gym. They're hanging from the rafters. So,
that's awesome.
Absolutely.
I've been to a
middle school game.
Yeah, when my daughters cheered in middle school, I went to it. That is the best middle school atmosphere you will ever go to. Is Hamlet Middle School gym for Rockingham Hamlet.
Now,
awesome.
Did you go to either Rockingham?
No,
or Hamlet?
I'm from Manson County.
Oh gosh, you're a Bearcat. Huh?
I am a Bearcat.
Or was it Bowman then?
No, it was Anson.
Okay. See, I played.
Guys, you know Bowman. That's impressive.
Yeah, my mom went there.
Okay,
that's why I know.
Gotcha.
But I went to Rockingham, and Rockingham Hamlet has been this rivalry for decades. And it's one of the great things about sports.
Yeah, I've always heard the Rockingham Hamlet thing and thought it was ridiculous till my first Rockingham Hamlet basketball game in Hamlet.
Yeah,
and it was just off the chain atmosphere. It was awesome.
It's to the point where, obviously we all end up being Raiders, but after we graduate, we go back to the Red Rams versus Rockets.
That's right.
The orange and black versus the red and black. So, but for my big impact this week, a couple of guys that are on the Raider football team, sophomore quarterback Caleb Hood and his senior teammate Malik Stanback, who were part of the Martin Luther King commemorative parade in downtown Rockingham this past Saturday. It was actually them two, Coach Till. They all walked carrying the banner with this year's theme on it, which was Unity, Yes We Can. So
that's awesome. I did not know that.
And then afterwards, they held a ceremony type rally thing in front of on the steps of the courthouse, and they both spoke too. And they talked about unity, about playing as a team. Of course, Hood talked about how being the quarterback, usually all the attention's on him, but it takes every one of those guys on the sidelines. And then Stanback talked about being a leader from his perspective being injured all season.
He's such a great young
absolutely.
man.
And being a senior, all the
awesome.
guys looked to him,
Yeah.
and he took advantage of that, and as he should. So
He owned it this year. I mean, he was right there. If you watch those Raider games, he was as impressive to watch on the sidelines this year as he was on the field the year before.
yes, he was. And Wofford College, I want to give a shout out to them because
Amen.
they still gave him a scholarship,
honor his
even with that.
scholarship.
Yeah, and a lot of times that doesn't happen.
No,
So
because he had like 8 schools looking at him, and I think the other 7 bailed.
yeah, so
And
kudos.
Wofford stood right by him.
Kudos to Wofford for
Hope he
sticking
wins a lot
by.
of games for Wofford next year.
I hope he does, and I think he could.
Yep.
All right, so let's move forward. That's done with.
All right.
Let's do our love it or hate it.
All
So
right.
let's start with the XFL, which will be kicking off next year, 2020. Believe it or not,
Well,
it's
they bring him
almost
back.
here.
He hate me.
I don't know. He's probably a little too old now, but that's the only guy anybody ever
That's
remembers.
right.
But the XFL, believe it or not, is in deep, not just talks, but deep talks with Fox and ESPN to broadcast games next year. Love it or hate
I
it.
love it. I'll watch it. I like watching it.
I love it too. And the first version of the XFL I thought was a gimmick. Mm-hmm. It was very gimmicky. It was very
Yeah,
WWF,
that's right.
which was the thing
it
at the
was.
time. I feel like this time around, Vince has scaled that part of it back a little bit to where it'll be more
I think it'll be some quality football.
more traditional football, but yet it'll still have the snazziness to
Yeah.
it that you expect from Vince.
Have you ever been to an arena football game?
I have not.
Those were fun back in the day to go to, and I think this is going to be a lot like the atmosphere of an arena football.
I hope so. And I know they haven't yet announced all of the teams, but I'd like to see Charlotte get one.
I would love to see Charlotte go in. They could certainly support that.
Or, somewhere around here. There's other
because
North
the
Carolina
closest one
teams.
right now is DC or Atlanta, I think.
Yeah.
Or maybe not even Atlanta, but DC.
Yeah, I think you're right. DC's got one. I don't want to travel all the way to DC to watch.
Not watching. No, I'm not. I don't like it enough to drive to DC
No,
to watch
no.
it. I can assure you that.
But still, just the fact that Fox and ESPN are interested means Vince has
Yeah,
done something
that's right. That's right.
All right, moving forward. Michael Beasley checks into a Los Angeles Lakers game wearing his practice shorts and then is promptly sent to the locker room. Love it or hate it.
Hate it. Practice. Come on.
We're talking about practice?
Not even a game.
I don't know. I guess I love it, but come on, Beasley. Like, did you think he wasn't going to play tonight?
I mean,
or
it
what?
was funny. I mean, the
Get
dude.
get your right shorts
Oh,
on.
who me? Like his wife sitting there pointing it out to him or
Yeah,
something.
and of course they had to send him back.
Oh,
'cause
yeah, that's right,
The
yeah.
rules say you have to wear the proper uniform. Moving forward, going to the NFL, the defensive coordinator for the Chiefs, Bob Sutton, was fired after that AFC Championship loss to the Patriots.
Well, I don't want to say I love it because the guy lost his job, but the Chiefs' defense was suspect, and so when you take a big loss like that, I mean, during the game they talked about how that was the weak link, and if they truly feel that's a weak link, they got to go improve it.
Let me ask you this before I answer. How was the Chiefs' defense all season long as a whole? What would you say?
Pretty good.
Pretty good?
Yeah.
See, I feel like all of the attention is being paid on the fact that they lost to the Patriots. And that's why I was wondering, because then at that point I would say hate it, because if the guy overall had a pretty good defensive unit and they had a pretty good year, perhaps they should have kept him on. I'm not sure how they did the whole year as a whole.
Yeah.
But I mean, we've seen guys fired for a lot less. So
Yeah.
I also read that Steve Spagnuolo is in talks to take his spot. Of course, he's been a head coach in the past for the Rams.
That's
actually.
right. And he was asking an assistant in Dallas when they were pretty good.
That's right. He was. So he's got experience on the D side of it.
Yep.
Question here about medical cannabis legalization. Now, I don't know your opinion on this, but the NFL has nixed a Super Bowl ad that would advocate medical cannabis legalization. So, love it or hate it.
Hate it. I love free speech.
All right,
Whether you like medical cannabis or not, I'm for free speech.
Good answer. And the thing is, John and I on Good Morning San Diego talk all the time about how we're seeing so many states legalize it. It's probably just a matter of time.
Yeah.
I think the thing holding this up, the guy that tried to put this ad out was willing to put out the $5 million for the 30-second ad. And it wasn't going to be where it was like a commercial for their group. It was a commercial talking about the benefits of medical cannabis. One of them was a Marine vet, and the other one was a 5-year-old who suffers from seizures. Two of the prime candidates that can help out with that. The thing that I found interesting, it didn't surprise me that they nixed it. I just think it's a little hypocritical because you can ask NFL players, one of the first things, I don't know if it's as rampant as it used to be, one of the first things they do if you got hurt during the game is hand you a handful of pills. And as we know now with the opioid crisis, most NFL guys would prefer to use marijuana over painkillers because of the addiction that comes with it.
I mean, the opiate. Whew. Maybe a different. I know we could get into a long debate about that, but I just don't see where if it's got a medical benefit. The problem is, and I certainly see a problem with just nixing an ad to drown it out.
Perhaps another thing hanging it up is, look, marijuana is legal in some form or fashion in 30 of 50 states. But the Super Bowl is played in 50 of 50 states. Right. And I think ultimately that was the factor, or the fact that 20 of the states don't have it legal, and perhaps that was one of the reasons why they nixed it. So moving forward, going to the NBA, projected NBA lottery pick Darius Garland withdraws from Vanderbilt to get ready for the NBA draft. Now look, I don't know this guy from Joe Blow down the street. But the fact that now we talk about how college sports are a business, now we're seeing this in the NBA now too. But leaving early, get ready for the draft. Love it or hate it?
Hate it. If I don't know who he is at all, he's probably not ready anyway.
That could be true. And it says he's a lottery pick.
And so, I mean, for all the LeBron Jameses of the world and the Kobe Bryants and the Kevin Garnetts, there are hundreds of guys that we don't know who they are, who are broke today.
Michael Olowokandi is one that comes to mind.
That's right. I mean, so I get it. I get it, and we've talked on this show. I would sound hypocritical talk about the football guys sitting out of the bowl games over it, but man, these guys in my opinion, get some bad advice because I mean,
well, I don't mean to interrupt you, but we saw something similar with Nick Bosa for Ohio State, but he had an injury, and then decided instead of coming back and risking re-aggravating that, I'm gonna sit out, rehab, work out, get ready for the draft. This is just a guy who's just going to drop out and get ready for the draft. But I think, again, we're talking about hypocrisy. The NCAA needs to admit that this is a business. You know,
that could eliminate a lot of their issues.
Yeah, they're all the time like, well, you know, it's the student part of the student athlete, and that's fine for every other sport except basketball and football, and maybe to an extent baseball. But I don't know. I think at some point they've got to admit, you know, look, if a guy thinks he's good enough, look, Zion Williamson, for instance.
I was just getting ready to say him. If you tell me next week he's doing it, I'm going to say love it.
Exactly. And we're at the point now where you pretty much couldn't blame the guy. Because, look, we know he's probably going to be the number one pick.
That's right.
He's got nothing to gain, maybe a championship perhaps, but nothing else to gain from staying around, and an injury and career and millions of dollars to lose.
That's right.
And when you're talking about perhaps the amount of money that's being thrown out there is the number one catalyst for this. But again, it comes down to it's a business, and we're starting to see these kids start to see it that way. So, speaking of basketball, Paul Pierce, who's seen a lot of basketball, played a lot of basketball, and talking about the Dukies, says that Duke could beat the Cleveland Cavaliers now that LeBron's left town. Love it or hate it?
Love it. That's kind of funny. It's not true, but it's funny.
I love it too, and it's absolutely not true.
That's right. Cavaliers will run them off the court.
And we've had this discussion because we talked about could Alabama beat whoever the worst team is in the NFL. It's usually the Browns, but not this year.
That's right.
And as much as you want to talk about it, the best college football or basketball team out there could not ever beat the worst NBA or you know. I mean, those are professional. Those are grown men, if you will.
That's right. It just wouldn't happen. It's funny, but funny to say.
Although he did try to make a pretty good case on it, so go read that up.
Okay.
We talked about Michael Beasley earlier. Cole Beasley from your Dallas Cowboys says that the front office there, quote, pushes who they want to get the ball to, end quote.
Hate it. Quit whining. He's whining, in my opinion, because they got Amari Cooper and his touches went down.
Yes, it did. Is there any legitimacy to this, you think? Because we're talking about Jerry Jones. You know, any other owner, I might say.
Anything's possible with Jerry Jones. And a lot of people, me included, have said that's the reason he keeps Jason Garrett around, because Jason Garrett is a yes man sometimes. So it could happen, but I'll be shocked if Stephen or Jerry Jones are saying to him, especially not during the course of a game, we need to get so-and-so the ball more. But I do think by default that his touches were going to get affected once. They weren't winning before they got Amari Cooper.
I don't think he's the number one guy.
I don't either. Cole Beasley is not a number one guy. This is a guy going into free agency looking for the best deal he can get.
Oh, is he a free agent?
Yeah, he's
see, I did not know that. That makes more sense.
He said he would like to be in Dallas, but he's going to be wherever he's utilized more.
Okay. I agree with everything you said, and I'm just going to end it with the part about Jerry Jones. I wouldn't put it past him.
I get it.
And again, all the
Jerry's
other
not a meddler.
all the other owners, I'd be like, nah, that wouldn't happen.
Yeah.
But for the longest time, Jerry was the GM. Hell, he still might be the GM technically.
He is.
Sometimes I think maybe he's a little too close, but he has relinquished a lot of that to his son.
Stephen Jones
hasn't
has
he?
taken over a lot of it.
Yeah.
And Stephen Jones actually refuted what he said today. He said that we absolutely have zero.
Well, what do you expect him to say?
Of course, he's going to say it, but I don't think he's as much micromanaged style as Jerry is. So I have a hard time believing it.
Yeah. How old's Jerry Jones? He's getting up there.
108. I don't
Yeah,
know.
so
he's in his 70s. I don't know.
They're going to have to bury him at the stadium.
That's right.
Moving forward here, staying in the state of Texas, the Houston Rockets have traded Carmelo Anthony to the Chicago Bulls, along with about $1.2 million to offset some contracts.
Yep.
Love it or hate it?
Love it. Bulls are never going to play him. They're going to cut him or trade him.
They will.
And then Melo's going to go find somewhere to sign on.
He'll never play for the Bulls.
No.
I hate this though for Carmelo because
It's sad because he's been a great player.
It is.
Really
He's a Hall of Famer in my book.
I think so.
Never won a championship at this level. Of course, he won one in his only year at Syracuse.
Neither is Barkley. Neither is Malone.
Sure, absolutely.
That's right.
So that doesn't necessarily measure
Right.
your career, but I feel like he's starting to realize that his time is up.
Yeah.
Because Carmelo doesn't necessarily fit in today's NBA. He requires the ball constantly.
That's right.
He's terrible on defense.
That's right. He has no desire to play defense.
Yeah.
And he's got to try to back you down.
Doesn't shoot a whole lot of threes.
No.
He doesn't want to make the extra pass.
That's
and of
right.
course, with the way the Warriors play, it's affected everybody. And he just doesn't play that kind of ball.
He wants everything to filter through him, and he's just not that player anymore.
I'm curious. I think we can both agree he won't play for the Bulls. But I'm curious who's going to take him.
I heard L.A. Lakers mentioned.
And I'm sure that
LeBron has campaigned for him in the past.
Yeah, and I'm sure, but I feel like at this point in his career, he's just running off of his name only. Carmelo is.
Yeah.
And perhaps, he plays with LeBron. He could have a renaissance, and the Lakers need all the help they can get right now because they're free falling.
They've shown how bad they are without LeBron.
Well, I think that's every team.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, look at the Cavs, for instance.
That's right.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, we'll have to wait and see where he ends up. But all that being said, I wouldn't mind if Carmelo came to Charlotte.
I thought
sell
crossed
some
my mind.
tickets. Him
That's
and Kemba
right.
would.
Hey, I'd go
together.
watch him play.
Yeah.
I'm going to a Hornets game in a couple of weeks. I wouldn't mind him being there when I went.
Who are you going to see?
I can't remember. Somebody gave us tickets for Christmas. The Kings, maybe.
Oh, okay. The Kings are better this year. Moving forward, because we're running out of time here. It goes by quickly. The Mariners of Seattle have signed Ichiro ahead of their series in Japan. Now, it's a minor league contract, but of course, he officially retired. But this will give them an opportunity to sign him for a day and allow him to retire as a Mariner.
Love it. I love Ichiro. Great for baseball. He opened up the international game so much. And he's just a great baseball player. Love it.
I'm right there with you. Absolutely love it. Hall of Famer through and through.
Take away his Japanese career, he's a Hall of Famer.
And I was just going to say that. Can you imagine if he played his whole career in the States?
Pete Rose is probably not the hits leader.
He's not. There's
That's
no
right.
way Ichiro would have it.
He was awesome to watch in his prime.
Yes, he was. The way that he would just kind of fall out of the batter's box and slap him, he could put the ball wherever he wanted to.
I saw him play in Camden Yards again when Ripken was still around. It was a great get to see Ripken and Ichiro in the same field on the same field. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. I'm going to save this Braves one for last here.
All right.
The Milwaukee Brewers. Of course, they play in Miller Park. It's in Milwaukee.
That's right.
But they're changing the name. It's going to be, they don't have the official name, but it's going to a company called American Family Insurance. And I fell asleep halfway through reading that.
God.
Love it or hate it?
Hate it. That's so awful.
Yeah. I hate it too. Why would you do that? It's like if you change Coors Field.
That's
like,
right. I mean,
those names fit.
Really? Miller Park. Oh, my gosh. That's terrible.
But you show me the money, though.
That's right.
Michigan defensive lineman Rashawn Gary, who's going to be a first-round draft pick this year, has started his own agency, is going to be the CEO, and apparently already has a client.
I love it. Man,
Besides
that's awesome.
himself.
That's awesome, man. I mean, that's a guy, he knows what the average NFL career is. Why not think about after right now?
Yeah, he's already
that's
thinking
smart.
ahead. Now, I'm not sure how much success he'll have with it.
Right.
But again, just being proactive in that regard.
Being willing to swing and miss is awesome.
Absolutely. And then finally, talking about our Atlanta Braves. They have re-signed Nick Markakis.
I love it.
Do you?
Yes.
All right.
I mean, it probably means they're not going after anybody else all these names we've been talking about for 2 months we hope they would get. But Markakis had a great year. They signed him to a 1-year, $6 million deal. For baseball standards, that's a low risk, high reward contract, and he had a career year last year.
Yeah, there's
if
also
he falls on the table, you don't re-sign him.
There's also a club option out there too.
Yeah, for the next year.
Yeah, so they could potentially bring him back for a second year.
Yeah.
Now, I know Markakis had a great year last year. However, he tailed off in the second half.
He did.
I think in the first half he batted around 300. Second half he batted around 260.
Yeah, he did have a worse second half.
260, not terrible.
Yeah.
But see, I'm curious if he played so well because it was his walk year, perhaps. I don't know.
Maybe.
However, this could also be his walk year again if they don't pick up the club option.
Yeah, the thing about a 1-year contract is he's playing to stay in the league now.
Yeah. Plus, Gold Glover.
Yep.
And something that you can't measure is his clubhouse leadership.
That's right. Solid player.
And you got all these young guys coming up.
Right.
I think veteran leadership is very important.
And they're talking about maybe moving Camargo to the outfield. So I think that would reduce Markakis' role a little bit if they did that. And, who knows, maybe he doesn't wear out if he's not playing 150 games.
He's also durable, too.
Yeah, he is.
He plays a lot of games in his career. Matter of fact, I think he's on the top 10 all-time list of games played.
He played over 150 last year, I believe.
Yeah, every year since he was with Baltimore. So, all right, well, we are out of time, so that's going to do it for this edition of the Ross Rundown. We tried to go boom, 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 but we love sports so much, sometimes we run over. Right. So appreciate everybody tuning in across all of the Richmond Observer's platforms, which are, of course, free of charge to you. Brandon Fall, I'm Matt Harrelson. We'll see you right back here next week for another edition of the Ross Rundown.